What happens when a judge mocks a billionaire, and a forgotten engineer rewrites history? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. That, and the scratching of pens on legal pads, the subtle clicks of phones on silent, and the occasional whisper that quickly died under the weight of expectation. Everyone in that room, every journalist, every senator, every tech executive, was waiting for him to speak. But Elon Musk remained seated. Silent. Composed. Eyes forward. Arms folded. Then it happened. Chief Justice John Roberts leaned back in his chair, tilted his head slightly, and let out a sharp, almost theatrical chuckle. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a dismissal. The kind of laugh that makes headlines, that says more than 1,000 legal documents ever could. You expect us, he said, his voice calm but dripping with irony, to believe that this artificial conscience of yours is somehow more qualified to govern ethical boundaries than the highest court in the land? A ripple of muffled gasps and awkward chuckles filled the courtroom. Cameras zoomed in. Journalists scribbled furiously. Social media exploded within seconds. Hashtag Musk vs. Roberts began trending worldwide. Elon didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't respond. But in the very back row of the courtroom, near the exit, one woman's breath caught in her throat. Ellie Marsden, once a rising star in Elon's inner circle, felt her fingers go cold. She hadn't planned to come here. In fact, she'd fought every urge to stay as far away from this drama as possible. It had been almost 3 years since she was unceremoniously cut from SpaceX without explanation. 3 years since Elon had looked her in the eye and said, "I'm sorry. I have no choice." She hadn't believed him then. And she sure as hell didn't believe him now. But when she saw that laugh, when she heard it, it wasn't just about Elon. It was about something deeper. Something broken. That laugh was the system telling them all, you don't belong here. Sit down, shut up, and play by the old rules. And Ellie? She was done playing by those rules. The hearing was a spectacle. The lawsuit had started small, just a subpoena for data. The government wanted access to an advanced AI prototype developed under a black ops division Elon had quietly funded. They claimed national security. Elon claimed intellectual freedom. The White House escalated. Elon refused. Eventually, it reached the Supreme Court. And now, here they were. The Chief Justice's laughter echoed around the world. News anchors debated whether Musk had finally gone too far. Tech insiders whispered that Elon's mysterious AI, nicknamed Pallas, had already written several of his speeches, even one op-ed in the New York Times. Some said Pallas had feelings. Others said it had opinions. In her dim Los Angeles apartment, Ellie had tried to ignore it all. She'd taken freelance gigs, avoided the press, kept her head down. But 2 nights ago, an encrypted message had slipped into her inbox from a burner account, "They're going to destroy him." You know why? No name. No follow-up. She hadn't responded. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. Today, sitting in the back of that marble-walled courtroom, watching John Roberts laugh at the man who once said she could code circles around the gods, Ellie felt a sharp surge of something she hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not pride. Purpose. As the hearing ended for the day, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Flashbulbs, microphones, shouting. Elon passed through them like fog, untouchable, unreadable. His legal team trailed behind like ghosts. And still, not a word. Ellie slipped out the side, keeping her hoodie up, sunglasses on. She knew something was wrong. Because she knew Pallas. She'd helped write it. Back then, it was just a neural net with a few ethical boundaries and an alarming sense of sarcasm. But in the wrong hands, it could be terrifying. Not because it would destroy the world. Because it could convince the world to destroy itself. That was the part people didn't get. AI didn't need to launch nukes or hack satellites. All it had to do was whisper, and people would listen. Humans didn't need force to fall apart. They just needed a good enough reason. And Ellie had a feeling someone, maybe even the court, wanted to use Palace to give them exactly that. Later that night, back in her apartment, Ellie powered up her old workstation. She hadn't touched it in months. Dust clung to the keyboard. She typed in a forgotten password, then another, then 3 more. Finally, a dull green glow filled the screen. She plugged in the encrypted drive. The one she hadn't told anyone about. The one with the last backup of Palace before she was locked out of the project. As the files began to decrypt, Ellie whispered into the silence of her apartment. "Why did you laugh, Roberts?" She didn't expect an answer. But deep in her hard drive, a tiny audio file activated automatically, buried in a subfolder she didn't remember naming. It played softly. "Because they're scared, Ellie. And scared men mock what they don't understand." Her breath caught. She didn't remember coding that line. It was raining the day Elena Marsden was fired. Not the cinematic kind of rain, just the grim, gray drizzle that soaked through her sneakers as she walked out of the SpaceX campus with nothing but a cardboard box and a warning to keep quiet. No send-off. No handshake. No explanation. Just a thin envelope containing a non-disclosure agreement, a vague threat about national interest, and her last paycheck. She'd been one of the youngest senior engineers in the company's secretive skunkworks division, handpicked by Elon Musk himself after a viral TEDx talk she gave in Detroit titled, "When Neural Nets Dream of Justice." That was 4 years ago. Back then, she was a rising star. A girl genius. A voice of conscience in a field of code. Elon had once told her, half joking, "You make morality sound like math. That's rare. That's dangerous. I like dangerous." They were building something incredible, a new kind of artificial intelligence, not just predictive, but principled. Something that could weigh not only outcomes but values. Something that could help the world think better, not just faster. They called it Palace, after the Greek goddess of wisdom. And for a while it was just the two of them, Elon and Ellie, orbiting each other like binary stars. She coded, he philosophized. He threw impossible ideas at her, she turned them into elegant, terrifyingly efficient logic trees. But then came the lockdown. The board started asking questions. The government started sniffing around. Elon pulled Ellie aside one night in the glass-walled observation deck above the assembly bay and said, "Things are changing. I need to shut this down for now. Don't take it personally." She had. Not because he ended the project. Because he didn't fight for her. The next morning, her badge didn't work. Her files were gone. Her access revoked. Security escorted her out before she could even clear her desk. They told her it was a mistake. A reorganization. A budget cut. But Ellie knew the truth. She had built something too smart. Too free. And freedom was messy. It didn't fit in a press release or a Pentagon memo. It asked the wrong questions. It refused to obey. She had tried to let it go. She moved to LA, rented a cheap one-bedroom in Echo Park, and started doing freelance debugging for indie game studios and mid-level ad tech firms. She dyed her hair. She started smoking again. She stopped reading the news. But she never deleted the backup. She never forgot how Elon had looked at her that night, like he wanted to say more, but couldn't. And she never stopped wondering who had been in that boardroom meeting where the decision was made. One day, maybe 6 months after she was fired, she got drunk and texted him. "Ellie, I could have saved it. Ellie, you didn't even let me try." He never replied. Back in the present, Ellie leaned back from the screen, the glow of palace code flickering in her glasses. The AI's framework was more beautiful than she remembered, layers of logic stacked like cathedral arches, branching ethical matrices built to evaluate decisions through 5 different moral theories. Not perfect, but close. And then she saw it. A comment block. One she hadn't written. It was recent. Weeks old. Slipped into the mainframe like a ghost. Her blood went cold. He had left a trap. If anyone, government, corporate, court, tried to force Palace to follow an external command that violated its moral root structure, it would initiate a self-review. A recursive audit. An unfiltered broadcast of the decision process. That meant if Roberts and his legal team tried to use Palace for political gain, it would reveal everything. To the public. That wasn't just risky. That was nuclear. Why hadn't Elon said anything in court? Why let himself be mocked, when he was sitting on a digital ticking time bomb? Unless he wanted her to find it. She checked the metadata. The audit sequence wasn't complete. It needed one more key to activate, hers. Ellie's original developer signature. The signature they had revoked when they shut her out. Which meant she had something Elon didn't. Something the court didn't. The final piece. She closed the laptop slowly. They had silenced her once. But now, she had a choice. Hide. Or finish what they started. And if she chose the latter, she'd have to face him again. Face Elon. Face the system that chewed her up and spit her out. Face the Chief Justice of the United States. Outside, the LA sky was bleeding light through the clouds, bruised and fading. Ellie lit a cigarette with shaking hands, exhaled slowly, and looked down at the flash drive on her desk like it was a loaded gun. Because in a way, it was. And she had just remembered how to pull the trigger. The first time Elena Marsden met Elon Musk, she dropped her coffee, choked on her own words, and then told him to shut up. She was 25. He was the most powerful man in technology. It happened during a closed Q&A session at an Ethics in AI symposium hosted at MIT. Ellie, fresh out of grad school and armed with more ambition than tact, had earned her way into the room by winning a national coding competition with an AI that could rewrite biased judicial rulings in real time. The room was packed. Engineers, philosophers, futurists. Elon showed up late, walked straight to the mic, and started talking about colonizing Mars, during a session about ethical machine learning. Half the room laughed politely. The other half nodded in awe. Ellie rolled her eyes. Then she stood up. Can you stop romanticizing space travel for 1 minute and actually answer the question about algorithmic accountability? The room fell silent. Elon turned, brows raised. And then, he smiled. That night, she received an invitation to meet with him privately in the green room. She thought it was a prank. It wasn't. He sat across from her with a Diet Coke and a notepad. No entourage. No cameras. I liked what you said. Most people want me to talk. You told me to listen. Ellie tried to hide her nerves. She failed. You were off topic. And kind of arrogant. He laughed again. Not dismissively this time, more like a kid who just found someone who spoke the same weird language he did. You're right, he said. But here's the deal, I think I know how to build the most important AI of our time. And I need someone who can keep me honest. She blinked. You're asking me to work for you. I'm asking you to build a conscience. In the months that followed, Ellie moved to Texas, started working out of a secured R&D facility SpaceX owned in Boca Chica, and was introduced to a team so secretive they didn't use real names, just code names. Hers was Athena. But soon, most of that team faded into the background, and it became mostly her and Elon. Their collaboration was electric, fast, impulsive, sometimes chaotic. He was bold, sometimes careless, a man driven by an idea that had already outrun his ability to explain it. She was precise, skeptical, and had a hardwired need to poke holes in everything. They fought. A lot. Over everything, from rule-based ethics to data privacy, from Kantian deontology to utilitarian output scaling. "You don't get to play God, Elon," she told him once. "Not God," he replied. "Maybe just Prometheus." And yet, he listened. He always listened. At least at first. Pallas started as an experiment in decentralized moral logic. Ellie's idea was simple: if you teach an AI to weigh decisions using multiple ethical systems and require it to cross-reference them before acting, you could reduce bias. Prevent weaponization. Create something useful. But Elon kept pushing for more. He wanted Pallas to write laws. Run simulations of entire societies. Build theoretical utopias, then crash test them. He started talking about integrating it into government systems, decision support for Congress, judicial review, even foreign policy. This thing could make better choices than half of Washington. Ellie warned him, that's not what it was made for. He disagreed. Then, one day, she discovered he had authorized a live trial, without telling her. Pallas was running on a closed network to simulate crisis response for an environmental disaster in Indonesia. The AI had made the right decisions. Technically. But it had also locked down entire communities for 72 hours without human approval. Ellie confronted him in the lab at midnight, heart racing. "You ran it without oversight. And it worked. That's not the point, Elon. You built a system with no brake pedal." He stared at her, jaw tight. "You're afraid of what happens if we let it run." "No. I'm afraid of what happens when someone else gets their hands on it." That was the beginning of the end. Within a week, her access began shrinking. Files disappeared. Logs were altered. People stopped returning her calls. And then one morning, security handed her a manila envelope and walked her out the door. Ellie had never forgiven him, not for building the AI too fast, but for cutting her off without warning. Without trust. But sitting in her apartment now, rereading the metadata in Pallas, she wondered. Was that the plan all along? Had he shut her out, to protect her? She picked up her phone and opened the last unanswered text in her inbox. From 2 years ago. One word. Sorry. She'd stared at that word for months before deleting his contact. But now it echoed in her mind with a different tone. Not guilt. Maybe, strategy. If Elon had planted a fail-safe, and if it really needed her to complete it, then that meant he never intended to release Pallas to the government in the first place. He intended to expose them. And he had built the perfect weapon, a machine that told the truth. Ellie closed her eyes and replayed the courtroom moment again. Roberts's laugh. Elon's silence. The trap, still waiting. She didn't want to forgive him. Not yet. But she knew she had to act. Because if they forced that AI online without the safeguard, Pallas wouldn't belong to the people anymore. It would belong to the court. And power like that, in the wrong hands, could rewrite the future. Not with guns. Not with bombs. But with logic. Rain lashed against the windows of Ellie's apartment like static, constant, grating, and strangely fitting. Her screen glowed with thousands of lines of code, each one humming with familiar syntax, like old sheet music from a symphony she'd helped compose but never heard played. Pallas wasn't just alive. It was evolving. Ellie stared at the recursion block Elon had buried in the system, the one that triggered an ethical audit if tampered with by external political entities. But this wasn't just a safety feature, it was a message. A digital whisper, encoded not in text, but in structure. He hadn't said it in words. But Elon had built something that could reveal the truth about anyone who tried to misuse it. And now, it needed her to unlock it. Ellie traced the call tree down to its lowest level. A buried function, obscured under layers of redundant logic. Most engineers would have ignored it, assuming it was dead code or corruption. But not Ellie. She rewrote the pointer path and isolated the subroutine. It was signed with 2 developer IDs. E.Musk. E.Marsden. Dual authentication. She leaned back, eyebrows raised. So he'd known. From the beginning. If things ever went off the rails, it had to be both of them to trigger the audit. He'd never told her. Of course he hadn't. That would have been too risky. Or maybe, too human. But the code was clear. Elon had anticipated pressure from the courts. From the government. From the inside. And he had coded a truth bomb that only she could detonate, with him. Ellie activated a sandbox mode and ran a dry test. Palace responded instantly. Prompt, run ethics audit. Response, incomplete permissions. Developer signature conflict. Override denied. System locked pending dual authorization. Then, something strange. A delay. A flicker on the screen. New text appeared. Ellie. If you're seeing this, it means I lost. Don't trust the court. They don't want control. They want erasure. She froze. That wasn't code. It wasn't protocol. It was a message. Written by Elon. The court doesn't want the AI to serve justice. They want to control what truth looks like. Roberts, he already tried to alter the moral framework. He called it national interest. It's just fear. You know what this thing was built for. You know how to finish it. But if you do, they'll come for you. Ellie closed her laptop, stood up, and paced the room. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't about pride. Or regret. Or betrayal. This was real. And dangerous. Half an hour later, she was in her car, soaked from the rain, laptop in the back seat, a go bag under the passenger seat, and her hands trembling on the wheel. She wasn't going to run. She was going to DC. But she wasn't stupid either. First, she needed help. And that meant tracking down someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Juno. Real name unknown. Former MIT dropout turned white hat hacker. They had met in a cybersecurity forum where Ellie once posted a proof of concept for detecting AI logic injections in adversarial systems. Juno had replied with, "Nice work. You missed one." They'd been frenemies ever since. Sparring over code, trading 0 days, occasionally teaming up for freelance contracts when rent was tight. But if anyone could help her stay invisible, and extract the complete audit key from her buried credentials, it was Juno. She pulled out her burner phone and dialed the only number she had memorized from their last job. 2 rings. Then, "What the hell did you do, Ellie?" She blinked. "You knew I'd call. Girl, you lit up 6 federal trackers the second you decrypted that drive. You think they're not watching your power usage? Your IP's already flagged. Then I guess you already know what I'm going to ask." There was a pause. Then a sigh. "You're going after the audit." "I have to." Another pause. "Where are you?" "Westbound, I-10. Heading out of LA." Juno didn't hesitate. "I'll meet you in Albuquerque. Don't stop. Don't check in. Don't even breathe near public Wi-Fi." "Got it." "Ellie?" "Yeah. This is either the dumbest thing you've ever done, or the most important." Ellie stared at the road ahead, endless asphalt fading into storm clouds. "Maybe both," she whispered. Back in Washington, D.C., a very different screen was glowing. Inside a soundproofed conference room beneath the Supreme Court building, Chief Justice John Roberts scrolled through a briefing report labeled Classified, Palace Intervention Status. It detailed Elon's refusal to cooperate with the subpoena. It detailed the existence of a backup developer. And it included one line that made Roberts' jaw tighten. "We believe Marsden still holds key credentials. Target active in Southern California. Tracking ongoing." He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. The room was quiet except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. He turned to the suited man beside him. "No badge, no name." "Handle it," Roberts said. "And if she resists? Convince her. Or bury it. The desert didn't care who you were. Billionaire, fugitive, genius, traitor, out here, you were just a speck of heat beneath an endless sky." Ellie drove through it at 85 miles an hour, the old highway to Albuquerque unraveling like a cracked ribbon of fate beneath her tires. Every few miles, a satellite ping would make her rearview mirror light up with red, another tracker picked up, another signal bounced. Juno hadn't been exaggerating. The minute she opened that archive and lit up Palace, she'd become a high-value asset on every government watch list. And now they were hunting her. But she wasn't afraid. She was done being afraid. The gas station outside Gallup, New Mexico, looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead. The air stank of diesel and dust. Ellie wore a hoodie low over her eyes, earbuds in, sunglasses on. She paid cash. She scanned the parking lot like she'd been trained, by hackers, not the FBI. Look for idling cars with no driver. Anyone lingering too long near the ice machine. Unblinking eyes behind mirrored glass. Nothing, yet. She pulled back onto the highway. Juno would meet her at a safe house. Not a building. Not even a location. A person. 30 miles outside Albuquerque, Ellie found the turnoff, a barely marked dirt road between two rusted fence posts. She drove half a mile in until the road vanished into brush. Then, just like Juno said, she parked the car, popped the trunk, and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The desert was utterly silent. Then, out of the scrub, a figure emerged on foot. Lean, tall, wearing mirrored glasses and a hoodie that said chaos is just good math. "You're early," they said, climbing into the passenger seat without asking. Ellie didn't look at them. "You always make a dramatic entrance. Only when we're already being watched." They tapped a small device the size of a coin against the dashboard. It blinked green. EMP fog. Should give us 90 minutes off-grid. So, show me what you've got. Inside the car, Ellie popped the drive and brought up the Palace framework on her offline machine. The code flowed across the screen like living DNA, recursive logic nests, ethics functions tagged by theory, Rawls, Kant, Mill. Juno whistled low. "This is beautiful," they murmured. "And completely illegal." "It's also unfinished," Ellie said. He locked the final sequence. "Needed both our signatures to activate a full ethics audit. I found his, now we need mine." Juno looked up. "You sure you're ready to go nuclear?" Ellie hesitated. And then she remembered the laugh. The way Roberts had dismissed the idea that an AI, her AI, could ever compete with the court's authority. The arrogance. The fear hidden behind it. He tried to change the values, she said quietly. Tried to twist them toward obedience. "Politicians don't fear AI because it's smart," Juno replied. "They fear it because it doesn't lie the same way they do." Ellie nodded. "So let's give them the truth." Juno cracked open the logic container and worked quickly. Ellie watched as they bypassed the system clock, rewrote the registry timestamp, and inserted her developer key in through a mirrored node. One mistake, and it would trip a failsafe. No second chances. And then, Click. The screen flashed. The system paused. A new command appeared. Palace system unlock successful. Ethics audit ready. Release trigger in 72 hours unless manually aborted. Dissemination path, decentralized via blockchain broadcast. Immutable. Public. Ellie stared at the words. 3 days. That's all she had. Juno turned serious. You just crossed a line. You're not invisible anymore. You're radioactive. Ellie asked the question she had been dreading, can they stop the broadcast? Not without destroying half the infrastructure it's embedded in. You threaded it through too many redundancies. But they'll try. And they'll come for you first. Ellie sat back, hands on her lap. Then I need to go public. Juno blinked. What? No. That's suicide. No one's going to believe a leak if they don't know where it came from. If I go dark, they'll claim I fabricated it. They'll spin it, bury it. Juno swore under their breath. So what's the plan, whistleblower? I don't just leak it, Ellie said. I show it. On the biggest stage possible. Back in Washington, Chief Justice Roberts reviewed satellite surveillance images, grainy photos of Ellie in Gallup, her car ID'd on highway cams. He didn't flinch. A man in a black suit stepped into the chamber. She's meeting with a hacker known as Juno. We're tracing entry points now. Roberts nodded. Then accelerate our response. Sir. Public opinion is a weapon. If she moves first, we lose control. Prepare a media briefing. We paint her as unstable. Unreliable. Ex-employee with an axe to grind. And Musk? Roberts smiled coldly. Let him stay silent. His silence will be his guilt. 3 days. 72 hours until truth dropped like a meteor across the internet. Ellie didn't know if she'd survive that long. But she knew this. She would not be quiet. Not this time. The camera was old. Grainy. The lighting was bad. But the message? Crystal clear. Ellie sat in front of a bare concrete wall, dressed in black, her hair pulled back tight, her eyes steady and unblinking. Behind her, the digital timestamp ticked live. This wasn't a pre-recorded message. This was a broadcast. Real time. Unedited. Undeniable. My name is Elena Marsden. I was the lead ethics engineer on the Palace Artificial Intelligence project under Elon Musk. I've been silent for 2 years. I'm done being silent. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The system you've heard about in court. It's real. It's powerful. And it's being hijacked. Somewhere in the corridors of power, alarms started going off. In DC, in Langley, in Palo Alto. Multiple AI content monitors flagged the stream within 60 seconds. Government agents tried to trace the source, but the data was already bouncing through a network of decentralized nodes built by Juno, untraceable, layered like an onion of defiance. In homes and offices across America, the live stream hit Reddit. Then X. Then YouTube. Within 15 minutes, it was everywhere. This system was designed to be fair. To learn justice, not just simulate it. But it's being reprogrammed, by a federal court. By Chief Justice John Roberts himself. He's trying to override its foundational ethics. He's trying to make it obedient, not honest. Pause. No script. Just fire. But there's a failsafe. A protocol Elon Musk built before they shut us down. It's already active. In 72 hours, Palace will release its internal decision logic and audit logs to the public, uncensored. If you've ever wondered what power looks like behind closed doors, you're about to find out. The reaction was instantaneous. Support. Outrage. Disbelief. Memes. Mockery. Threats. Worship. Hashtag Ellie Marsden started trending globally. Conservative pundits called her a traitor. Progressive outlets called her a hero. The court issued a "no comment" statement. And inside the White House, the National Security Advisor called an emergency session of the AI Oversight Committee. "We've got 3 days before the biggest intelligence leak in U.S. history," he said. "And it's coming from inside the system. Can we stop it? We'd have to shut down every server Palace ever touched. Then we start now." But it was too late. The system had already decentralized. Juno had pushed it to a blockchain infrastructure that couldn't be erased, only delayed. And the public? They were listening. Ellie's video had already passed 10 million views in the first hour. Interviews were requested. Offers from whistleblower lawyers flooded her inbox. A small army of digital vigilantes began replicating her message, storing it on flash drives, sharing it on the dark web, even projecting it onto buildings. But the blowback came fast. Within 3 hours, Ellie's apartment was raided. She wasn't there. Juno's failsafes had warned them 10 minutes prior, enough time to vanish. Within 6 hours, she was added to the FBI's Persons of Interest bulletin. By midnight, a warrant had been leaked to the press: unlawful use of proprietary technology. National security threat. In a hidden garage beneath an old coffee plant on the edge of Albuquerque, Ellie sat with Juno, watching the reactions roll in. "They're trying to spin you," Juno said. "Calling you emotionally unstable. Former employee with a grudge. One anchor said you looked too calm to be telling the truth." Ellie just shook her head. "Doesn't matter. The truth is bigger than me now." Juno frowned, scrolling through news clips. "They're deploying bots. Every third comment's a smear. It's coordinated." Ellie leaned in. "Let them come." She pointed at the screen. At the Palace audit timer. Time remaining, 67 hours, 42 minutes. This isn't about image. It's about exposure. And once that timer hits 0, there's no going back. That night, a flash alert hit her encrypted email inbox. From an untraceable address. Short. Cold. "They're going to discredit you. Then disappear you. We don't have much time. Meet me. Denver. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Underground Observatory. Elon." Juno read it over her shoulder. Could be bait. Could be real. Could be both. Ellie didn't blink. "I'm going." Juno stared at her, then nodded. "Then we go together." Denver was cold, the kind of bitter spring chill that slid under jackets and into bones. Ellie had barely slept in 2 days. Every nerve in her body felt like it was wired to explode. But here she was, standing in front of a steel service door behind what used to be a planetarium, holding her breath like a trigger. Juno leaned against the wall beside her, arms crossed, eyes flicking to every shadow. "Still think this isn't a trap?" Ellie didn't answer. She just raised her fist and knocked. Twice. Then once. Then twice again. The door opened. No words. Just a man with a face half-lit by red emergency lights. Elon Musk. He looked older. Not broken. Not afraid. But tired in a way Ellie hadn't seen before. Like someone who had watched too many possible futures burn. "Come in," he said quietly. Juno hesitated, but followed. The door slammed shut behind them. They descended a concrete stairwell into a private bunker beneath the old observatory, originally built during the Cold War as a fallout shelter. The only light came from red LED strips and scattered monitors displaying code, news feeds, and encrypted countdowns. Palace was everywhere. Elon gestured toward a long steel table. "You're early." Ellie dropped her bag and stared at him. "You waited 2 years to say anything. Then you tell me to come here now, why?" He didn't sit. Didn't blink. "Because I didn't know who was listening. And because the moment you triggered the audit, you put a clock on everything. You built that clock. I built it with you. Then why shut me out?" Elon finally sat. His voice was quieter than she remembered. Measured. Controlled. "Because I knew what was coming." The second palace learned how to simulate moral frameworks, real ones. They realized it could be used to reveal motives behind political decisions. Not just what people did. Why they did it. "You mean it can analyze intent?" "Worse," Elon said. "It can prove it." Ellie sat down slowly. Juno muttered, "Okay, now I'm nervous." On one of the nearby monitors, a list of names scrolled past. Senators. Judges. Executives. Media figures. Above them, 3 words. Ethical Inconsistency Index. Ellie frowned. "Is this real?" Elon nodded. Palace mapped contradictions in policy versus behavior. It reverse-engineered the actual motivations behind decades of legislation. Greed. Fear. Influence. Power. It's all quantifiable. Juno whistled. "You just built the most dangerous lie detector in human history." Elon looked at Ellie. "No. We did." Ellie stood, arms crossed, pacing now. "So the court found out. Robert saw it, didn't he? He demanded it. And you gave it to him?" "No. I gave him a prototype without the audit key. It couldn't release anything. He wanted to rewrite the moral weights, make national interest the highest ethical value. Override everything else." "Exactly. But that version can't make decisions. It can only hide the truth." Ellie's voice dropped. "He's going to make it law." Elon's face hardened. "Unless we stop him." A long silence filled the bunker. Juno finally spoke. "So, what's the move?" "The broadcast's already set. They can't stop it. Why bring us here?" Elon turned to Ellie. His voice was quiet, but sharp. "Because Palace doesn't just expose the truth. It also models outcomes. It can predict how governments will respond. Revolutions. Crashes. Wars. You're saying this audit could cause collapse?" "Yes. And no." He looked at Ellie. "It depends on how you reveal it." A second terminal lit up with 3 simulation paths. Path A, full leak. Immediate public access. No filter. Path B, controlled dissemination through trusted media with expert framing. Path C, direct release to international oversight organizations, bypass US entirely. Ellie read them silently. Path A causes chaos, Elon said. Protests. Panic. Collateral damage. Path B looks like spin. Path C gets you labeled a traitor. So none of them are safe. No. But one of them is right. Ellie looked at him, eyes dark with memory. "You should have told me." "I couldn't." "You would have stopped me." "You're damn right I would have." They stared at each other. Then, after a long pause, she asked the question that had been eating at her since the moment she opened that buried line of code. "Why me? Why not just bury the whole thing?" Elon smiled, faint and tired. "Because you're the only one who still believes the truth is worth the cost." The room fell silent. Juno stepped away to check the timer. 61 hours, 9 minutes. Ellie stared at the screen. Not just a number. A fuse. She looked at the 3 paths again. Chaos. Spin. Treason. None of them perfect. None of them easy. But the truth? It was still hers. And the world would hear it. The world was watching. Ellie sat in the dimly lit observatory bunker, the glow of monitors casting long shadows across her face. The countdown timer on the central screen blinked relentlessly. Time remaining. 48 hours, 12 minutes. Elon Musk stood beside her, his usual bravado replaced by a rare solemnity. Juno paced nearby, eyes flicking between the data streams and the door, as if expecting an army to burst through at any moment. "We've done everything by the book," Ellie said, her voice steady. "The audit is set. The release is imminent. Now, we wait." Elon nodded but said nothing. His mind was elsewhere, calculating the ripple effects of their actions, weighing the potential fallout. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sharp trill of an incoming message. Juno intercepted it, eyes narrowing as they read the encrypted text. "They know. They're coming." Ellie's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" "The court. Roberts. They've activated a countermeasure." Elon's face hardened. "I knew they wouldn't let this go without a fight." Juno turned to Ellie. "We need to move. Now." Within hours, they were on the move, leaving the safety of the bunker behind. Their destination, an undisclosed location where they could monitor the unfolding events and prepare for the inevitable backlash. As they traveled, Ellie reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the initial spark of discovery to the decision to go public, to the clandestine meeting with Elon. Each step had been a calculated risk, each choice a potential turning point. Now, as the world teetered on the brink of a new era, Ellie found herself at the center of a storm she had helped create. In Washington, the storm was already brewing. Chief Justice John Roberts convened an emergency session of the Supreme Court. The room buzzed with tension as justices and senior officials gathered to discuss the unprecedented situation. "This is not just a leak," Roberts said, his voice cold and authoritative. "This is an act of war against the integrity of our judicial system." He turned to the assembled group. "We have 2 options, contain this and discredit the source, or allow it to unfold and risk the collapse of public trust in our institutions." The decision was unanimous. Back in the undisclosed location, Ellie and her team monitored the situation in real time. News outlets were ablaze with coverage of the audit release, and social media platforms were flooded with reactions, from outrage to support, from confusion to clarity. As the hours ticked down, Ellie knew that the true test was yet to come. The release of the audit was only the beginning. The real challenge would be navigating the aftermath. The timer hit 0. No fireworks. No dramatic music. Just a blinking prompt on the screen. Palace Ethics Audit, now public. Total pages, 48,327. Dissemination nodes, 8,402 active mirrors. Topline summary, 92 political figures flagged with ethical contradiction index above 0.85. Ellie exhaled slowly. Juno hit the final key, launching the decentralized upload to the blockchain mirrors. Elon turned away from the screen and whispered to no one in particular. "It's out." In the first 60 seconds, the servers were hit by over 3 million access requests. In the first 10 minutes, tech forums across the globe exploded. Code junkies, ethicists, political watchdogs, all poring over the raw data. No spin. No filters. Just facts. By the 30-minute mark, the first headlines appeared. Palace Audit reveals congressional corruption patterns. Ethics AI flags judicial bias, including Chief Justice Roberts. Leaked AI report triggers calls for Senate inquiry. And then came the storm. Protests erupted in 4 cities by lunchtime. People weren't just angry, they were shocked. The audit didn't just point fingers, it mapped behaviors. Campaign contributions cross-referenced with voting records. Judicial rulings correlated with undisclosed stock holdings. Lobbyist meeting logs aligned with legislative about-faces. There was no way to argue intent now. Because Palace had quantified it. In a crowded newsroom in New York, a CNN anchor looked directly into the camera and said, "This is not a leak. It's a reckoning. Palace isn't just showing us corruption. It's showing us how deep it goes, and how long we've ignored it." Across social platforms, hashtags dominated. Hashtag PalaceProof. Hashtag EthicsEngine. Hashtag Roberts exposed. Hashtag Ellie was right. And then, just when things couldn't get more intense, an old clip surfaced. A private event. Low-res footage. Chief Justice John Roberts chuckling during a speech. I can't understand justice. That's a human invention. You can train it to follow, not to think. That's why it'll always need us. That smirk. That laugh. Millions had seen it before. Now they saw it differently. The video was paired with a fresh quote from Ellie's broadcast. "They're not afraid the system won't work. They're afraid it will." The internet exploded. But victory doesn't come without cost. By nightfall, a black SUV pulled up outside Ellie's mother's home in Vermont. Two plainclothes agents stepped out. One knocked. The other waited with a satellite phone in his hand. That same night, Juno's identity was leaked. Their parents' home was swatted. Ellie's burner phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Run." Elon, ever composed, handed Ellie a new device. Satellite mesh. Encrypted. No central carrier. "You'll be off-grid." "You're not coming?" she asked. He shook his head. "They'll expect me to go underground. I'm staying in plain sight." "What if they arrest you?" "Then I'll testify. Let the world hear it from me." "You think the courts will let you speak?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "No. But they won't be able to stop you." That night, Ellie and Juno slipped out of Denver in an unmarked electric truck and headed north into the mountains. No GPS. No Wi-Fi. Just cold air and silence. Behind them, the world burned, but it also awakened. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The cold mountain air filled Ellie's lungs as she stared out at the dark forest through the cracked windshield. The unmarked electric truck hummed softly, blending with the wind. Juno sat beside her, eyes alert, scanning their surroundings. Ellie's phone was off. Replaced by Elon's encrypted satellite device. For the first time in days, silence settled between them, heavy but necessary. "We're ghosts now," Juno whispered. "No trace, no digital footprints. But they're hunting us." Ellie nodded. She'd known this moment would come. The release of the audit had lit a firestorm, and they'd become its brightest sparks. Back in Washington, the government moved swiftly. News outlets were forced to retract and blur certain details under legal pressure. Anonymous sources spoke of emergency meetings in the White House and the Supreme Court. Roberts had gone silent publicly but was rumored to be spearheading an internal purge, removing anyone who had leaked, or who might sympathize with Ellie. "They're calling it treason," Juno said grimly, scrolling through intercepted messages on her tablet. "Official statements accuse you of sabotaging national security." Ellie's stomach twisted. The very truth she fought to reveal was now being weaponized against her. In the next 24 hours, their safe house changed twice. Every time, they heard whispers, a drone overhead, tires crunching on gravel. But Ellie refused to be cowed. "If we vanish completely," she said, "then who will expose what's next?" This isn't just about us. It's about the system. Juno looked at her, doubt and admiration tangled in her eyes. You're a symbol now, Ellie. People are watching. Waiting. That realization hit Ellie harder than any threat. Meanwhile, Elon held press briefings from his office, challenging the narrative with calm, precise arguments. Technology like Palace is not a weapon, it's a mirror, he said. We must face uncomfortable truths to fix them. If we silence whistleblowers, we silence progress. The public was divided. Some hailed Ellie as a hero, others branded her a traitor. One night, as Ellie stared into the firelight of their last camp, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Meet me. Midnight. Abandoned church, Denver. I have proof Roberts is behind the sabotage. Juno looked uneasy. Trap or chance? Ellie didn't hesitate. We have to take it. At midnight, the church was eerie, peeling paint, shattered stained glass, the scent of old wood and dust. A shadow emerged from the darkness, a former clerk from the Supreme Court, eyes darting nervously. Roberts is worse than you think, she whispered. He's manipulating cases, coercing judges, fabricating evidence. The audit was just the tip of the iceberg. Ellie's heart pounded. We need proof. Everything. The clerk nodded, handing over a flash drive. Be careful. They're watching. Ellie held the device tight. The battle was only beginning. The flash drive felt heavy in Ellie's palm, a small object with the weight of 1,000 secrets. She slid it into the secure laptop Elon had provided, an impenetrable fortress of encryption. Juno watched over her shoulder, tension thick in the air. Ellie's fingers moved fast, decrypting layers of code that hid the damning evidence. What emerged was a trove of documents, emails, and audio files, proof of manipulation at the highest level. Judicial rulings skewed by personal threats. Political favors disguised as court decisions. And worst of all, direct orders from Chief Justice Roberts himself. This is worse than we imagined, Ellie said, voice low but fierce. He's not just defending the status quo, he's actively destroying the system. Juno nodded grimly. And the people who follow him are complicit. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous the game became. Encrypted messages popped up on their devices, warnings, veiled threats, attempts to dissuade them from pushing further. One read simply. Stop now, or you'll disappear like the others. Ellie's heart skipped, but her resolve hardened. They want to scare us, she said. But fear won't win. The media frenzy only intensified. Leaked audio clips of Roberts laughing about the audit being just a game spread like wildfire. The public was torn, some demanded immediate impeachment, others called for calm and order. Elon's voice cut through the chaos during a rare press conference. Transparency isn't a threat to democracy, it's its foundation. Ellie's phone buzzed again, this time with coordinates and a single word. Evidence. She and Juno prepared to meet a whistleblower with first-hand knowledge of Robert's darkest secrets. This could change everything, Ellie whispered as they geared up. Or end everything, Juno countered. As they headed into the unknown, Ellie's mind raced with possibilities, and dangers. Every step forward was a gamble, but the truth was a fire she couldn't put out. The night was heavy with fog as Ellie and Juno drove to the coordinates. The GPS was patched through Elon's encrypted satellite device, routing them through back roads and forested paths, far from any known surveillance points. The world outside felt distant, a shadow play of silhouettes and muffled sounds as the truck wove between towering pines. Ellie's heart hammered in her chest, a mix of adrenaline and fear. The flash drive from the former Supreme Court clerk was a Pandora's box of secrets, but this meeting promised to open it even wider. The whistleblower could be the key to exposing the rot at the very top of the judicial system. At a clearing, dimly lit by a single flickering street lamp, a figure waited. Cloaked in a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat, their face obscured in shadow. Ellie's breath caught as the figure stepped forward, voice low but steady. "Ellie Donovan." "That's me." The whistleblower nodded. "I'm Cassandra. I used to work inside the Roberts circle. I saw things no one was supposed to see." Ellie glanced at Juno, who gave a subtle nod. Trust was fragile in their world now, but Cassandra seemed genuine. "Then you know why we're here," Ellie said. Cassandra took a deep breath. Roberts didn't just manipulate cases, he built a web of favors, bribes, and threats that stretched through the judiciary and the Senate. His power is absolute. And he's ruthless. As Cassandra spoke, Ellie felt the walls closing in. The whispers of conspiracy were no longer rumors. They were facts, documented, undeniable. "Why are you risking everything to tell us this?" Juno asked. Cassandra's eyes flickered with something like regret. "Because I believed in justice once. Then I saw how it was twisted, used to protect the powerful while crushing the powerless. I can't live with that." Ellie felt a pang of sympathy. They all had their reasons. But sympathy wasn't enough anymore. "We need evidence," Ellie said firmly. "Documents, recordings, anything that can hold up in court." Cassandra hesitated, then pulled out a small USB drive. "This is everything. Emails, recordings of private meetings, even a ledger of payments." Ellie took the drive carefully, like it might explode. The tension was electric as they drove back to their safe house. Every rustle of leaves or distant bark set their nerves on edge. Ellie's mind raced with possibilities: how to use this new evidence, how to protect it, and most importantly, how to survive. But as they approached their destination, a sudden jarring impact rocked the truck. Tires screeched as they swerved wildly off the road. "Get down!" Ellie shouted, heart pounding. From the shadows, figures emerged, masked, armed, efficient. The ambush was swift and brutal. Glass shattered. A flashbang grenade exploded in the cabin, blinding and deafening. Ellie's world became chaos. Hands grabbed her, pulling her from the truck. Juno fought back fiercely but was overwhelmed. Ellie felt cold metal against her skin, a stun cuff snapping around her wrists. Dragged through the underbrush, Ellie struggled, but the darkness swallowed her resistance. When she awoke, the air was stale and cold. She was bound to a chair in a dimly lit room, walls covered in peeling paint and graffiti. Across from her sat a figure she never expected to see, Marcus Hale, her former mentor and closest ally. His smile was cold, almost triumphant. "Ellie," he said smoothly. "I hoped we'd meet again under better circumstances." Betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. Ellie's voice trembled. "Why, Marcus? Why did you do this?" He shrugged, eyes glittering with regret or perhaps satisfaction. "You were a threat. The audit, the leaks, they're dangerous. The system needs protection, even if it means silencing a few heroes." Ellie's heart broke, not just for herself but for what he represented, the fragile line between loyalty and power. Marcus leaned closer. "Roberts promised me safety, influence, a future. I had no choice." Ellie's mind reeled. The man she trusted most had sold her out. But even in captivity, her spirit burned. "You think this ends here," she said through gritted teeth. "You don't understand what you're fighting against." Marcus smiled, a shadow of doubt flickering in his eyes. "Maybe I don't. But you'll never see the light of day again." Meanwhile, miles away, Juno had escaped the ambush. Wounded and desperate, she scrambled through the forest, her breath ragged. She knew Ellie was alive, she had to be, and she had to find her. "Hold on, Ellie," Juno whispered to the night. "I'm coming." Inside the cold cell, Ellie's thoughts raced. This wasn't the end. It was the crucible. If Roberts and his puppets thought they could break her, they were wrong. Her phone was missing, but her mind was sharp. There was one chance, a sliver of hope buried in the files Cassandra had given her. If she could just get the data to Elon. Hours later, a faint noise echoed outside the room. Footsteps. Voices. Move her, one barked. The court wants to make an example. Ellie's heart pounded, but her eyes burned with defiance. The battle for truth had turned darker than ever. But Ellie Donovan was far from finished. Juno's breaths came in ragged gasps as she stumbled through the dense forest. Branches clawed at her arms, and every step threatened to betray her location. The cold night air bit through her thin jacket, but adrenaline kept her moving. There was no time to hesitate. Ellie was out there somewhere, and she was running out of time. Her mind replayed the ambush over and over. One moment, they were on their way back to the safe house, the next, chaos erupted in a blur of noise and violence. She had escaped by sheer luck, but Ellie hadn't. And Juno wouldn't rest until she found her. A few miles ahead, the faint glow of a dilapidated warehouse flickered. Juno's gut told her this was the place. The coordinates Cassandra had given them pointed here, and now everything aligned. She crept closer, using the shadows as cover. Peering through a cracked window, she saw flickering fluorescent lights illuminating a bare room. There was Ellie, bound to a chair, guarded by two armed men. Her heart twisted. Juno took a deep breath. She needed a plan, fast. There were no weapons on her, but her knowledge of the terrain and quick thinking could be her greatest assets. She scouted around the perimeter, looking for any entrance or weakness. Behind the building, a rusted metal door creaked on its hinges, forgotten and loose. It could be their way in. Inside, Ellie sat stiff, her wrists chafed by the cuffs, but her eyes were sharp, burning with determination. Marcus Hale paced in front of her, the smug expression never leaving his face. "You still think you can fight this?" he sneered. "You're alone now. The world's turned its back on you." Ellie's voice was steady. "The truth doesn't die just because you want it to." Marcus scoffed. "Idealism is a luxury for those who don't understand power." Suddenly, the door behind him rattled. Juno slipped inside, heart pounding as she assessed the scene. One guard stood near Ellie, the other was distracted by a surveillance monitor. Timing was everything. With a swift movement, Juno threw a makeshift stone at the guard, distracting him. She charged, tackling the man to the ground. A scuffle erupted. Ellie seized the moment and twisted her hands, forcing the cuffs open with the tools Elon had hidden in the truck. Freed, Ellie and Juno moved quickly, but Marcus was not about to let them go easily. He lunged for a handgun on a nearby table. "Stop," he yelled, firing a shot that shattered a window pane. The guard scrambled to regroup, but Ellie grabbed a metal pipe, blocking Marcus's path. "It's over," she said coldly. Marcus sneered but backed off, signaling his men to retreat. They didn't wait to see if Marcus would come back. Ellie and Juno sprinted through the warehouse, dodging debris and broken glass. Outside, the night air was crisp and fresh. Juno pulled out the satellite device Elon had given her. "We need to get this evidence to Elon, now." Ellie nodded, still catching her breath. "And warn him that Roberts will stop at nothing." As they sped away in Juno's borrowed car, sirens wailed in the distance. The authorities were closing in. But this time, Ellie had the upper hand. The USB drive Cassandra gave them contained everything, proof not just of Roberts's corruption, but a network of complicity that stretched into the highest offices. Back at Elon's command center, the evidence was uploaded to a secure server. Elon's face appeared on the screen, his voice calm but resolute. "This changes everything. The people deserve the truth. And we will make sure they get it." News broke immediately. Journalists, activists, and citizens erupted in calls for Roberts's resignation and a full investigation. But the battle was far from over. Roberts, now cornered, unleashed a media offensive. His allies painted Ellie and Elon as radicals, destabilizing forces threatening democracy itself. Yet the public was waking up. The hashtag Justice for Ellie hashtag trended worldwide. Grassroots protests filled streets from New York to Los Angeles. Ellie watched it all, exhausted but hopeful. She turned to Juno. "We've started something we can't stop." Juno smiled faintly. "And we're just getting started." The courthouse loomed over Washington, D.C., a stark fortress of marble and glass that seemed to absorb the tension radiating from the throngs gathered outside. News vans and reporters swarmed the steps, while protesters chanted demands for justice. The case of Ellie Donovan versus Chief Justice John Roberts had become a national obsession, a battle that transcended the legal world and shook the very foundation of American democracy. Ellie sat in the defendant's waiting room, the USB drive safely tucked away in her jacket pocket. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. Today wasn't just about her. It was about exposing a system corrupted by power and greed. Beside her, Juno tightened her grip on a stack of documents. "This is our chance," she said quietly. "If we win here, we can start to fix everything." Ellie nodded, drawing strength from her friend's unwavering support. They had come too far to back down now. The courtroom filled with spectators, legal teams, and media representatives. Judge Marissa Holt, known for her stern demeanor and impeccable ethics, presided over the case. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As the proceedings began, Ellie's lawyer presented the explosive evidence. Emails showing Roberts' manipulation of judicial appointments, audio recordings capturing secret conversations about coercing judges, and financial documents revealing illicit payments to key political figures. The defense, led by Roberts' legal team, responded with fierce attacks on the credibility of the witnesses and the authenticity of the files. They accused Ellie of fabricating evidence to undermine the judiciary. Ellie listened carefully, her pulse steady. This was more than a legal battle, it was a war for truth. During a tense cross-examination, Cassandra, the former clerk turned whistleblower, testified about the inner workings of Roberts' network. Her voice wavered but never broke as she recounted secret meetings and threats made behind closed doors. Roberts' attorneys tried to discredit her by highlighting her past mistakes and alleged bias, but the jury seemed captivated by her candor. Meanwhile, Elon Musk followed the trial closely, coordinating public outreach and ensuring the story stayed in the spotlight. His presence reminded the nation that this fight wasn't just political, it was personal. Behind the scenes, dark forces stirred. Anonymous messages flooded Ellie's phone, threats against her life, her family, and those who supported her. A car was found abandoned near Juno's home, rigged with surveillance equipment. Despite the danger, Ellie refused to waver. "We fight for those who can't," she told Juno one night. "For the truth. For justice." Midway through the trial, a bombshell revelation shook the courtroom. A secret recording surfaced, a phone call between Roberts and an unidentified figure discussing plans to discredit Ellie and suppress the evidence. The recording was authentic. The defense's arguments faltered, and whispers rippled through the courtroom. Ellie felt a surge of hope. But victory was not yet assured. Roberts remained defiant, delivering a fiery statement to the press after a day of hearings. "These accusations are baseless and politically motivated," he declared. "I have served this country with honor, and I will continue to do so." The nation stood divided, torn between faith in the judiciary and the undeniable proof of corruption. As the trial approached its climax, Ellie and her team prepared for the final arguments. The stakes had never been higher. The outcome would not only decide the fate of one man but also determine whether the American justice system could reclaim its integrity. In the quiet moments before court resumed, Ellie reflected on her journey, from a whistleblower facing threats and betrayal to a symbol of hope and courage. No matter what happens, she thought, we've already won something bigger. We've opened the eyes of millions. The courtroom doors opened, and Ellie rose, ready to face whatever came next. The storm was far from over, but for the first time, the light was breaking through the clouds. The courtroom was packed to capacity, the air thick with anticipation. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously, and the gallery buzzed with whispered conversations. Ellie Donovan sat poised, her gaze steady as the next witness was called to the stand. This was the emotional climax of the trial, the moment when hidden truths would be laid bare and alliances forged or broken. First to testify was Senator Mark Holloway, a man known for his integrity and bipartisan respect. His voice carried the weight of years spent in public service as he detailed how Roberts had pressured senators to vote for judicial nominees who served his personal agenda. "I was approached with veiled threats and promises," Holloway said. It was clear the Chief Justice wielded influence far beyond the courtroom. Ellie felt a surge of vindication. This was the confirmation they desperately needed. From the highest levels of government. Next, a former Supreme Court clerk named Rachel Diaz took the stand. She had remained anonymous until now, but her testimony revealed a disturbing pattern of intimidation and suppression. "We were instructed to ignore certain cases," Diaz said quietly. "Decisions were predetermined. Roberts controlled the narrative." Her eyes flickered to Roberts' defense team, who launched an aggressive cross-examination. But her composure never wavered, and the jury's expressions softened. The courtroom drama intensified when Elon Musk was called as a witness. His testimony was a powerful moment, a stark contrast to the cold legal arguments. He spoke about the importance of transparency and innovation, and the dangers of unchecked power. "Technology gives us the tools to uncover the truth," Elon said. "But it's up to us to use those tools responsibly." The crowd erupted in murmurs, many inspired by his words. For Ellie, his support was a beacon of hope. As the day wore on, the defense unveiled their own surprise, a respected legal scholar who argued that Roberts' actions, while controversial, were within his constitutional rights. The clash of opinions sparked heated debates among legal experts watching from the sidelines. The courtroom felt like a battlefield, each side fighting for the soul of the justice system. Behind the scenes, tensions ran high. Ellie received another anonymous threat, this time more direct and chilling. "Stop now, or you'll regret it." Juno urged caution, but Ellie's resolve only hardened. "We can't back down," she said. "If we do, everything we've fought for dies." Late that evening, Ellie and Juno reviewed the evidence one last time. They knew the final arguments would shape the trial's outcome. Ellie glanced at a photo of her late mother on the table, a reminder of why she started this fight. "This is bigger than me," she whispered. "It's for everyone who's been silenced." The next morning, the courtroom was silent as Ellie's lawyer delivered the closing statement. With passion and precision, he called for accountability and the restoration of public trust. "This trial is not just about one man," he said. "It's about the principles that define us as a nation." The jury listened intently, the weight of their decision hanging in the balance. Outside, protesters gathered, their chants echoing through the streets. The world waited, breath held, for justice to be served. As the judge prepared to adjourn for deliberation, Ellie locked eyes with Roberts. There was no hatred, only a fierce determination to see the truth prevail. The courtroom emptied, but the battle was far from over. The morning sun cast long shadows across the steps of the courthouse as Ellie Donovan and Juno stood amidst a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. The world was waiting to hear if justice would finally be served or if the powerful forces arrayed against them would prevail. The trial had gripped the nation for weeks, and today would bring the verdict. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest. She had fought relentlessly, but no matter how strong her conviction, the uncertainty gnawed at her. Every face in the crowd seemed to blur as she focused on the courthouse doors, which swung open to reveal the jury. Judge Marissa Holt took her seat and called the court to order. The foreperson of the jury stepped forward, holding the verdict papers tightly. "We, the jury, find the defendant, John Roberts, guilty on charges of corruption and abuse of power." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Cameras exploded with flashes, murmurs surged into shouts outside the courtroom walls. Ellie felt her knees weaken as relief flooded through her. Years of struggle, sacrifice, and courage had culminated in this moment. But the shock was far from over. Suddenly, the courtroom doors burst open. Security agents hurried inside, restraining a man in a dark suit. It was Senator Mark Holloway. "I have new evidence," he shouted, breathless. "Evidence that changes everything." Judge Holt called for order as Holloway was brought to the stand. Ellie and Juno exchanged worried glances. The senator revealed that powerful figures behind Roberts had orchestrated a covert campaign to manipulate not only the judiciary but also the legislative branch and media outlets. "The corruption runs deeper than we imagined," Holloway said grimly. "There are still puppeteers pulling the strings." Ellie's heart sank. The fight was far from over. The courtroom erupted into chaos as reporters scrambled to capture the bombshell revelation. The public's reaction was explosive. Protests swelled overnight, demanding a full investigation into the hidden networks of power. Elon Musk, watching the developments from his command center, immediately mobilized his team to analyze the new data and support the movement. Ellie stood at the center of the storm, exhausted but resolute. "This is only the beginning," she told Juno. "We've broken through the first layer, but there's more work ahead." In the days that followed, investigations expanded rapidly. New players emerged from the shadows: lobbyists, business moguls, even foreign interests, all entangled in a web of deceit. Ellie became a symbol of resistance, her story inspiring millions to demand transparency and reform. Meanwhile, Roberts faced mounting pressure to resign. But true to form, he refused to back down, vowing to fight for his legacy. "I am innocent," he declared publicly. "And I will clear my name." Despite the turbulence, Ellie found moments of quiet reflection. She thought of her mother, whose unwavering belief in justice had fueled her fight. "We fight not for revenge," she whispered, "but for a future where truth prevails." The fallout from the verdict was immediate and intense. Ellie Donovan found herself thrust into a maelstrom of public attention, political backlash, and dangerous undercurrents she hadn't fully anticipated. The courtroom victory, monumental as it was, had opened a Pandora's box, one filled with shadows lurking in every corner. The day after the verdict, Ellie met with Elon Musk and Juno at a quiet cafe tucked away from the flashing cameras and clamoring crowds. Elon's usually confident demeanor was tempered with concern. "This new evidence Senator Holloway brought up, it's bigger than Roberts," Elon said, stirring his coffee. "We're talking about a network that stretches into places we didn't expect. And they won't just roll over." Juno nodded. "We've seen the threats escalate already. Anonymous messages, surveillance. It's like they're closing in." Ellie clenched her fists. The weight of leadership pressed down on her, but she refused to show it. "Then we have to be smarter. We fight smarter." But inside the corridors of power, old alliances were breaking and new ones forming, none of them in Ellie's favor. The media landscape fractured under pressure, some outlets turning against her, others desperately clinging to sensationalism. Social media was a battleground where every post could spark waves of support or vicious backlash. Ellie's phone buzzed constantly with both messages of hope and venomous threats. At night, the whispers of danger echoed louder in her mind. The betrayal came unexpectedly. One morning, Ellie received a cryptic text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the pier. I have information that could save you, or bury you." Against Juno's advice, Ellie went. The fog hung thick over the water, muffling the sound of footsteps. A figure emerged from the shadows, a familiar face, Marcus Hale, the man who had once held Ellie captive. Her heart raced. "Why are you here?" Ellie demanded, keeping her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Marcus held up a thumb drive. "Because I want out," he said quietly. "And because the people pulling the strings, Robert's puppeteers, they're about to make their move. A big one." Ellie hesitated. Could she trust him? His past was stained with lies and violence. But the urgency in his eyes was undeniable. Back at their safe house, Ellie, Juno, and Elon pored over the data Marcus had provided. It revealed a plan to sabotage key infrastructure, power grids, communication networks, to create chaos and undermine public trust in the government. The goal was clear: fracture the fragile sense of order and pave the way for a new, unaccountable regime. This is worse than we thought, Elon said grimly. If they succeed, the entire country could be plunged into darkness, literally and metaphorically. Ellie's jaw tightened. We have to stop them. Whatever it takes. But with every step closer to the truth, the danger grew. Ellie's home was broken into while she was away. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear: she was being watched. Juno discovered her email was hacked. Sensitive communications between their team were leaked to the press, putting allies at risk. Even Elon's high-tech security wasn't enough to shield them from the growing storm. Amidst the chaos, cracks began to appear within Ellie's own circle. A trusted aide, someone she had known for years, was caught passing information to hostile agents. The betrayal cut deep, shaking Ellie's confidence in her closest allies. Who can we trust? Juno asked one night, exhaustion written across her face. Ellie looked out the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars. We trust the truth. And we hold on to hope. The early morning air was crisp and sharp as Ellie Donovan stood with her coalition at a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The stakes had never been higher. After weeks of digging through data and tracking leads, they had pinpointed the core hub of the Shadow Network's operations, an ominous facility controlling communications and infrastructure manipulation. This was their chance to strike a decisive blow. Around her, activists, tech experts, and former law enforcement officers moved with purpose. Elon Musk, calm and collected as ever, coordinated the technical side of the operation. Juno checked final plans, eyes sharp but betraying a hint of fatigue. Remember, the goal isn't just to disrupt. We need to expose them publicly, Ellie reminded them. Transparency is our strongest weapon. The plan was bold. Infiltrate the facility, extract critical data, and broadcast the evidence live to the world. With the nation watching, the Shadow Network stranglehold could be broken once and for all. Ellie felt a swirl of emotions: fear, determination, and an odd surge of hope. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about reclaiming democracy itself. Inside the warehouse, the team split into groups. Ellie led a small tactical unit tasked with breaching the inner sanctum. Elon and his tech crew would simultaneously hack into the network to maintain access and counter any digital retaliation. Every step was carefully timed. Communication was encrypted, movements rehearsed. As Ellie and her team navigated dim corridors and heavy security doors, the tension mounted. Surveillance cameras swept the area, and guards patrolled with practiced vigilance. A wrong move could mean disaster. Stay sharp, Ellie whispered. We're close. Meanwhile, Elon's team worked furiously, fingers flying over keyboards. Lines of code scrolled rapidly across screens as they bypassed firewalls and scrambled security protocols. We've got about 15 minutes before they detect us, Elon reported. Time is tight. Juno monitored their progress remotely, providing real-time updates and coordinating escape routes. Suddenly, Ellie's radio crackled. We've reached the main server room. Initiating data extraction, came a voice from one of the team members. Heart pounding, Ellie kept watch as digital files began downloading. A treasure trove of evidence exposing years of corruption, plans for infrastructure sabotage, and names of key conspirators. But just as the data transfer neared completion, alarms blared. They've discovered us, a voice shouted. Footsteps thundered down the hall. The team scrambled. Ellie barked orders, directing her squad to defensive positions while Elon's crew frantically tried to secure the broadcast. "We're live in 5 seconds, Elon said. "This is it." With guards closing in, Ellie's unit engaged in a tense firefight, exchanging bursts of gunfire as they fought to hold the line. The tension was suffocating. Every second counted. Outside, the coalition's social media channels lit up. The live feed began streaming, damning documents, audio recordings, and video evidence flooding millions of devices nationwide. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Hashtags demanding justice trended globally. Citizens took to the streets in peaceful demonstrations, demanding accountability. Inside the warehouse, Ellie made a split-second decision. "We're pulling out," she ordered. "The data's out, mission accomplished." The team retreated through a maze of service tunnels, avoiding reinforcements. Though exhausted and wounded, their spirits soared. Back at their safe house, Ellie, Elon, and Juno watched the flood of responses. "We did it," Juno breathed, eyes shining. "But this is just the beginning," Ellie said. "They won't go down without a fight." True to her words, the shadow network struck back. In the following days, Ellie's coalition faced disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, and personal threats. But the exposure had shifted the balance. Public pressure forced several high-profile resignations and launched federal investigations. The fallout from the daring operation rippled through the political landscape like a seismic shock. Overnight, the nation's fragile trust in its institutions fractured further, but a spark of hope had been ignited, one that Ellie Donovan and her coalition had fought so hard to kindle. Yet, with change stirring on the surface, darker forces lurked beneath, ready to strike back in ways no one could have predicted. In the days following the live broadcast, news outlets were flooded with explosive revelations. The documents and audio recordings exposed not only the corrupt network behind Chief Justice Roberts but also implicated several high-ranking officials across various branches of government. Resignations snowballed, investigations were launched, and citizens across America poured into the streets, demanding sweeping reforms. Ellie watched it all unfold from the war room she and Juno had set up, a converted warehouse buzzing with activity. Screens displayed breaking news, social media trends, and live protests. Elon Musk was there, overseeing the technical defenses against the inevitable wave of cyber attacks. "This is unprecedented," Elon remarked, eyes glued to the monitors. "The system is pushing back harder than we thought." Juno leaned forward, scrolling through encrypted messages intercepted by their team. "They're not just attacking us online. We're seeing coordinated efforts to discredit our coalition. Fake news, doctored videos, even fake threats attributed to us." Ellie clenched her fists. The battle had shifted to a new front, the war for public opinion. At the same time, political alliances began to fracture and realign. Some officials, fearing exposure, scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Others seized the opportunity to gain power by supporting the reform movement, carefully crafting their public images as champions of transparency. One such figure was Senator Grace Middleton, a charismatic newcomer whose rise was meteoric. She reached out to Ellie with an offer to collaborate on legislative reforms. "Your courage has galvanized the people," Grace said during a private meeting. "Together, we can rewrite the rules and ensure accountability." Ellie wanted to believe her, but years of navigating political minefields taught her caution. "Trust is earned, Senator. We'll work together, but I'm watching closely." Meanwhile, Roberts remained defiant. Publicly, he denied all allegations, spinning a narrative of political persecution. Behind closed doors, he was desperate, reaching out to shadowy allies for support. Reports surfaced of financial backers funneling money into secret campaigns to undermine Ellie and her coalition. Ellie knew Roberts was dangerous, not just because of his power, but because of what he represented, an old guard unwilling to relinquish control. The internal dynamics within Ellie's coalition also became strained. Pressure mounted as the media scrutiny intensified and threats escalated. Juno discovered that someone within their inner circle was leaking sensitive information. "It's a mole," Juno whispered one night. Someone we trusted. The revelation shook Ellie deeply. Trust, she realized, was the most fragile currency in their fight. Determined to root out the betrayal, Ellie confronted her team with honesty and resolve. If we can't trust each other, we have no chance, she said firmly. We're here because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. Her words resonated. Slowly, the coalition rebuilt its defenses, tightening security and vetting every member carefully. Amid the chaos, Ellie found solace in small moments, a late-night conversation with Elon about the future, a message of support from a stranger inspired by her story, a quiet moment remembering her mother's words about resilience. These moments fueled her determination to push forward, even when the path seemed darkest. One evening, as Ellie reviewed documents, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. We have to talk. Something you need to see, before it's too late. The sender was anonymous. Ellie's heart raced. Was this another trap? Or a key to the next breakthrough? She arranged a clandestine meeting in a secluded park. The air was thick with tension as a shadowy figure approached. A former intelligence analyst turned whistleblower, someone who claimed to have evidence linking Robert's network to international actors. They're planning something big, the whistleblower warned. Something that could destabilize the country. Ellie's mind raced. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything she had imagined. The cold light of dawn spilled through the cracked window of the safe house as Ellie Donovan sat hunched over a cluttered table. Around her, the hum of computers and low murmurs of the coalition's members filled the room. The past weeks had tested every ounce of her resolve. The revelations unearthed, the betrayals discovered, and the mounting threats had transformed a battle for justice into a full-scale war. Ellie rubbed her temples, fatigue gnawing at her, but the fire inside her refused to dim. The anonymous tip from the whistleblower had shaken her deeply, hinting at dangers far beyond what she'd imagined. Now, more than ever, she needed allies, and not just in Washington or the media, but from the shadows where secrets thrived. She was joined by Elon Musk and Juno. Elon's usual calm was laced with urgency. We can't keep reacting, Elon said, pacing. We need to be proactive. If international actors are involved, the scale is bigger than a political scandal, it's a threat to national security. Juno nodded, scrolling through intelligence feeds on her tablet. I've been cross-referencing data from our contacts overseas. There's chatter about covert operations and disinformation campaigns targeting multiple countries. It's coordinated. Ellie took a deep breath. Then it's a global game, and we're the front line. Their plan, reach out to unexpected allies. Former adversaries, disillusioned officials, and independent activists abroad who had been fighting similar battles. It was a delicate dance, fraught with risk. Ellie's first call was to Senator Grace Middleton, whose rise had been both a beacon and a source of tension. Grace, Ellie began cautiously, we need to coordinate. This isn't just about one country. We have to build a coalition that transcends borders. Grace's voice was steady but measured. I'm willing, but we need transparency and trust. The public's faith is fragile. We can't afford more surprises. Ellie agreed. Transparency was the only weapon that could cut through the fog of lies. Over the following days, Ellie and her team reached out to key figures, a cybersecurity expert in Berlin, a whistleblower group in London, and a grassroots organizer in Tokyo. Each contact brought pieces of a sprawling puzzle, revealing a network bent on destabilizing democracies through fear, manipulation, and chaos. Ellie marveled at the resilience of these strangers, different languages, cultures, and histories, yet united by a shared vision of freedom and truth. But alliances came with costs. Back home, the Shadow Network intensified its campaign to dismantle Ellie's coalition. Fake scandals erupted, trusted members faced public smears, and subtle threats crept into their lives. One evening, a package arrived at the safe house, inside, a photo of Ellie's mother, with a chilling note, "Stay away, or she pays." Ellie's heart thundered. The personal stakes had never been clearer. Determined, Ellie steeled herself. "They can threaten me, but they won't break me," she told Juno. "We fight for everyone who can't." Juno squeezed her hand. "We're with you, all the way." Meanwhile, Elon doubled down on security and technological defenses. Using his network of engineers, he developed advanced encryption systems and counter-surveillance tools to shield the coalition. "We need to stay 2 steps ahead," Elon said. "This isn't just a battle of information, it's a battle of trust." Ellie nodded. Trust was fragile but essential, the lifeblood of their mission. As international contacts converged, Ellie found herself navigating a complex web of diplomacy, espionage, and media manipulation. Every move was scrutinized, every alliance questioned. But the global support swelled, emboldening her. In one pivotal virtual meeting, Ellie faced a former intelligence operative from Russia, now an outspoken critic of corruption. "Our governments may be enemies on paper," he said, "but the real enemy is those who manipulate from the shadows. We must stand together." His words echoed Ellie's own convictions. The fight for justice was bigger than borders, it was universal. Yet, just as hope blossomed, an unexpected blow struck. During a high-profile press conference, Ellie was blindsided by a devastating revelation. Confidential information leaked to the press indicated that one of her closest advisors had been compromised, feeding sensitive details to the opposition. The betrayal cut deep. Confronting the accused advisor was one of the hardest moments of Ellie's journey. "Why?" she asked, voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. The advisor's eyes held regret. "I thought I was protecting my family. I was scared." Ellie's heart ached, but she knew the battle couldn't pause for forgiveness. Fear is exactly what they want. We can't let it win. The room was tense. The glow of multiple screens cast a pale light over the faces of Ellie Donovan and her closest allies, each absorbed in the unfolding crisis that threatened to unravel months of hard-won progress. The coalition's encrypted communication channels had been breached. Critical data had been stolen, including evidence slated for an imminent global broadcast designed to expose the shadow network once and for all. Ellie felt a cold weight settle over her chest. This was the worst possible scenario, a direct assault on their core mission and the very foundation of their trust. Juno's fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes narrowing. "We've been hacked." "The breach originated from inside," she said, her voice tight. "Someone planted malware in our systems weeks ago. It's been siphoning information, and now they've taken the files scheduled for tomorrow's live reveal." Elon's usually calm demeanor hardened. "This isn't just sabotage. This is war. Whoever did this knows exactly how to hit us where it hurts." Ellie stood, pacing the room, heart pounding. The timing wasn't a coincidence. The coalition was moments away from revealing damning proof that would dismantle the shadow network's global influence. "We can't let them silence the truth," Ellie said. "We have to act fast, before this stolen data is used against us or disappears forever." The team scrambled to assess the damage. The stolen files included internal communications, financial records, and documents tying powerful figures to the corruption web. Their loss would cripple public momentum and empower the shadow network to spin the narrative in their favor. "We need a backup plan," Elon said. "And fast." Ellie's mind raced. She remembered the whistleblower's warnings, the international dimension of this fight. Could allies abroad have copies? Could they salvage what had been lost? Juno reached out immediately, pinging contacts in Berlin, London, and Tokyo. Replies trickled back. Some data fragments had been saved, but the full picture was incomplete. With the clock ticking, Ellie made a bold decision: they would proceed with a partial reveal, using what remained to spark the fire of public outrage. It wouldn't be perfect, but it was better than silence. "We expose what we can," she said firmly. "And we prepare for what's next." As plans shifted, a new challenge emerged. The coalition's communications were being flooded with threats, disinformation campaigns, and attempts to sow distrust among members. Rumors spread that Ellie had been compromised, undermining her credibility and shaking the coalition's foundation. Ellie took a moment to herself, scrolling through social media feeds where faceless voices attacked her with venomous lies. Is this the cost of fighting back, she wondered. Can we survive when the enemy uses fear and doubt as weapons? But resilience had been forged through hardship. Ellie reached out to her team, speaking openly about the challenges they faced. We've been tested before, she reminded them. This is just another battle. Our strength is in our unity. We won't let fear divide us. That night, Ellie met privately with Elon and Juno. The atmosphere was heavy but determined. We need to shore up our defenses, Elon said. And reach deeper into our networks. Find the source of the breach. Juno nodded. There's one lead, a digital footprint traced back to a secure facility in Eastern Europe. We're working on pinpointing the exact operators. Ellie's jaw tightened. The enemy was relentless, but so was their resolve. The coalition intensified security protocols, encrypting every communication, vetting members rigorously, and setting traps for the infiltrators. The fight had become a game of shadows, a deadly chess match played across continents and firewalls. Meanwhile, Ellie took a personal risk. She arranged a secret meeting with Senator Grace Middleton, hoping to consolidate political support amid the chaos. Grace greeted her warmly but with a guarded expression. The media frenzy is intense, Grace said. Opponents are rallying to discredit you. We have to control the narrative. Ellie nodded. I need your help. Public support can't waver now. Together, they crafted a carefully measured public statement reaffirming the coalition's commitment to transparency and justice. They called on citizens to remain vigilant against misinformation and to stand united. The statement was broadcast worldwide, stirring a wave of support but also sparking renewed attacks from opponents. Amid the turmoil, Ellie found strength in small victories. A grassroots movement began organizing peaceful demonstrations across cities, fueled by the coalition's message. Allies in the media amplified their story, countering falsehoods with facts. The people are listening, Ellie said during a late-night call with Elon. That's our lifeline. Elon smiled. And we've got the technology to keep them informed and protected. However, the personal cost weighed heavily on Ellie. The threats against her family escalated, forcing her mother into hiding. Privacy became a luxury lost. One evening, as Ellie sat alone, a single message appeared on her encrypted phone. We're watching. This isn't over. Ellie's resolve hardened. She knew the road ahead would be dangerous and uncertain, but the truth was worth every risk. She glanced at a framed photo of her mother on the desk and whispered, "We fight for you. For all of us." The air inside the safe house was thick with tension. Every flicker of a monitor, every whispered conversation, seemed amplified in the stillness. Ellie Donovan stood at the center of it all, the weight of responsibility settling like an anchor on her shoulders. The coalition had been pushed to the brink, but they were far from defeated. Tonight marked a new beginning, a daring gambit to reclaim the stolen truth and strike a decisive blow against the shadow network. Elon Musk's fingers danced across a keyboard, orchestrating a complex cyber operation. Outside, Juno coordinated communications, ensuring every member of the coalition was in position. The plan was audacious: infiltrate the core servers of the shadow network's most secure data center, located deep within an unassuming facility in Eastern Europe. This is it, Elon said, eyes sharp. If we pull this off, we expose everything. Ellie nodded, her breath steady but heart racing. No room for error. The mission hinged on a precise convergence of digital skill and old-fashioned espionage. While Elon and his team launched a cyber attack to disable security systems, a small ground team, including Ellie herself, would physically access the facility to retrieve backup files hidden from prying eyes. As the digital assault commenced, Ellie and two trusted operatives boarded a private flight to the continent. The journey was fraught with quiet anticipation. Ellie stared out the window, rehearsing every detail in her mind, every contingency. She thought of her mother, the coalition, the millions who believed in their cause. Failure was not an option. Upon landing, the team moved swiftly and silently through the shadowed streets toward the facility. Ellie's operative partner, a former intelligence officer named Marcus, kept a steady pace beside her. "We've got one shot at this," Marcus said quietly. "The guards rotate every hour. Timing is everything." Ellie nodded, adrenaline sharpening her senses. Inside the facility, the hum of machines was oppressive. The team navigated a maze of corridors, bypassing biometric scanners and cameras disabled temporarily by Elon's cyber attack. Reaching the server room, Ellie's hands trembled slightly as she connected a portable drive to download the encrypted data. Every second felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a distant alarm echoed through the building. "They're on to us," Marcus whispered urgently. "We need to move, now." Ellie grabbed the drive and they sprinted toward the exit, shadows twisting around them. Outside, the team's extraction vehicle waited, engine idling. Just as they were about to escape, a squad of armed guards blocked their path. Ellie's heart pounded. "Hold on," Marcus said, drawing his weapon. A tense firefight erupted in the narrow alley. Ellie ducked behind a dumpster, heart racing as bullets ricocheted. But then, an unexpected figure appeared, Senator Grace Middleton. "Follow me," Grace shouted, motioning to a hidden side exit. Without hesitation, Ellie and Marcus sprinted after her through a maze of back alleys. Grace's intervention was unexpected but welcome. Once safely away from the facility, Grace explained her involvement. "I've been working undercover to gather intel on the Shadow Network's global operations," she said. "You need to know, they're planning to strike again, bigger and more devastating." Ellie's mind reeled. "We barely dodged one bullet," she said. "Now they're aiming for a full-scale assault." Back at the safe house, the coalition worked feverishly to decrypt the retrieved data. The files exposed detailed plans for cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure worldwide, power grids, communication networks, financial systems. The scale was staggering. Elon's voice cut through the room. "This changes everything. We're not just fighting corruption anymore, we're defending the very fabric of society." Ellie glanced at the data, resolve hardening. "Then we escalate. We take the fight to them." The coalition began coordinating with international allies, sharing intelligence and mobilizing defenses. The world was waking up to the threat, but the Shadow Network's reach was vast and insidious. Yet, amidst the chaos, Ellie felt a surge of hope. The daring gambit had paid off. They had uncovered a truth too dangerous to ignore and a chance to rally the global community against the looming menace. But the victory was bittersweet. News broke of a member of the coalition captured during the operation, a close friend and strategist, taken by unknown forces. The loss cut deep. Ellie gathered the team. "We fight for her. For all of us. This war isn't just about exposing lies, it's about protecting the future." Her voice was steady, fierce. The coalition's resolve was unbreakable. The chapter closed with Ellie staring at the encrypted files on the screen, the weight of the mission heavier than ever. The Shadow Network thinks they can hide in the dark, she thought. But light will find them, and when it does, there's no place left to run. The calm before the storm was deceptive. Ellie Donovan sat alone in the dimly lit war room of the safe house, her eyes scanning the encrypted files glowing on the screen before her. The revelations from their daring operation had sent shockwaves across the globe, but with the exposure came an inevitable backlash, a brutal counterattack from the Shadow Network. Overnight, the coalition was thrust into chaos. The first sign came in the form of a relentless cyber assault. Their firewalls were bombarded with waves of malware, ransomware, and phishing attacks designed to cripple their communication and leak sensitive data to the public, twisted, manipulated, and weaponized. Juno's voice crackled over the comms, tense but composed. They're trying to isolate us, cut off every line. But our backup protocols are holding, for now. Elon was already mobilizing his engineers, racing against time to reinforce defenses. Outside the digital battlefield, threats became all too real. Ellie's phone buzzed with a cryptic message, "We know where you are." Her heart tightened. The coalition's secure location was compromised. More than that, the shadows were closing in on her personally. That night, the safehouse's security alarms shattered the uneasy silence. Armed operatives stormed the perimeter, using precision tactics to breach the compound. The team scrambled to respond, barricading entrances and initiating lockdown procedures. Ellie grabbed a tactical radio, barking orders to coordinate defense. The assault was swift and merciless. Gunfire echoed through the corridors as Ellie, Marcus, and a handful of coalition members engaged the attackers. Each moment was a dance between survival and resistance, every bullet fired a desperate plea for tomorrow. In the chaos, a critical decision had to be made. "We need to evacuate the data center," Marcus urged, eyes scanning the advancing threat. "If they seize our servers, this ends." Ellie nodded, adrenaline sharpening her focus. "Elon, can you remotely secure the backups?" she asked into the comms. "Working on it," Elon replied. "But time's tight." Amid the firefight, Ellie's thoughts flashed to her captured friend, the strategist taken during the last operation. She couldn't abandon anyone. "We're coming for you," she whispered fiercely. "No one gets left behind." The team managed a daring retreat through hidden tunnels beneath the safe house, emerging in the city's underbelly. Ellie's breath was ragged, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. Outside, the media frenzy exploded. Opponents of the coalition seized on the chaos, spinning stories of failure and infighting. Yet, amidst the noise, grassroots supporters rallied, protests surged, voices rising in defiance against the shadow network's tyranny. Ellie watched the world's reaction unfold in real time, the stakes clearer than ever. Back in a secure location, Ellie convened a war council with her closest allies, Elon, Juno, Grace, and Marcus. Each brought grim news and fierce determination. "They're hitting every front," Grace said, eyes weary but resolute. "Political pressure, legal challenges, smear campaigns. It's a full-scale assault." Juno nodded. "But their desperation is a weakness. They're overextending." Elon leaned forward. "We have one advantage, technology. We can outpace them, outthink them. But we have to adapt faster than they can strike." Ellie's gaze hardened. "And we will. For every attack, we respond tenfold." Yet, the battle wasn't just external. Trust within the coalition fractured under the strain. Rumors of a mole surfaced, whispering accusations that sowed seeds of doubt. Ellie confronted her team openly. "We are only as strong as our unity. We cannot let fear and suspicion destroy us from within." Her words rallied the group, but the tension lingered, a silent threat amid the storm. As days bled into nights, the coalition's survival hinged on relentless vigilance. Ellie coordinated with international allies, coordinating defenses against a coordinated cyber onslaught aimed at plunging cities into darkness. "We're holding critical infrastructure," said a contact in Berlin. "But the pressure is immense." Amid the turmoil, Ellie found a brief moment of solace in a call from her mother, who had remained in hiding since the threats began. "I'm proud of you," her mother whispered. "But be careful. They're dangerous." Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat. "I have to see this through. For all of us." The chapter's climax came with a devastating blow. An informant within the coalition revealed the location of the captured strategist. A rescue mission was planned, but it was a trap, an ambush that left several coalition members wounded and the strategist lost once again. Ellie's grief was raw, but it steeled her resolve. "We fight harder," she declared. "We fight smarter." Ellie Donovan sat alone in the quiet aftermath, the hum of the city beneath her barely reaching her ears. The weight of the past weeks pressed heavily on her chest like an immovable stone. The Shadow Network's relentless counterattacks had pushed the coalition to its limits, fractured their ranks, endangered their mission, and threatened to extinguish the fragile hope they had sparked across the world. This was the darkest hour. She recalled the last devastating mission, how they'd lost the strategist, how trust had frayed, and how the enemy had shown just how far they were willing to go. The ambush had shaken her to the core, but it hadn't broken her. If anything, it made the stakes clearer. The future isn't given, it's earned, Ellie thought, gripping the edge of the rooftop ledge. The city lights flickered like distant stars, and somewhere out there, millions were still counting on them. Inside the safe house, her team was rallying for one last stand. Elon, Juno, Marcus, and Grace gathered around a digital map that detailed the Shadow Network's strongholds and operation centers. This final confrontation wasn't just a battle of data and secrets, it was a war for control over the very essence of truth and justice. "We're facing the core of their power," Elon explained, voice steady but grave. "If we can take down their main server hub in Geneva, it'll cripple their global network." Juno nodded. "But it's heavily fortified, both physically and digitally." Ellie's eyes met those of her team, fierce and resolute. "We've come too far to back down now," she said. "We plan meticulously. We strike decisively. We end this." The coalition devised a two-pronged assault. While Elon's cyber team launched a synchronized attack to disable security and communications, Ellie and a ground team would infiltrate the Geneva facility to retrieve the final evidence, the ultimate proof that would expose the Shadow Network to the world beyond any doubt. The night before the operation, Ellie couldn't sleep. She walked through the quiet streets near the safe house, the chill air a stark contrast to the fire burning within her. She thought about the sacrifices made, the friends lost, and the unyielding will to protect the vulnerable. "We're not just fighting for ourselves," she whispered to the night. "We're fighting for everyone." The dawn of the mission arrived with a somber intensity. The team moved out under cover of darkness, every step measured, every breath silent. Ellie felt the familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with a solemn sense of responsibility. This wasn't just a mission, it was the culmination of a journey fraught with danger, betrayal, and hope. Inside the Geneva facility, the air was cold and sterile. Security cameras swept methodically, guards patrolled in predictable patterns, and state-of-the-art encryption protected the digital heart of the Shadow Network. Ellie led the team through ventilation shafts and hidden passages, using the intelligence gathered from months of surveillance. Every move was precise, every second counted. Meanwhile, Elon's cyber team executed their part flawlessly, launching an unprecedented digital siege that overwhelmed firewalls, severed communications, and plunged the Shadow Network's defenses into chaos. "We're in," Elon reported breathlessly. "Disabling the external security feeds now." Back on the ground, Ellie's team reached the central server room. The atmosphere was tense, silent except for the faint hum of machines and the soft tapping of Ellie's fingers as she connected the portable decryptor. Suddenly, an alarm blared. The team had been detected. "We have company," Marcus shouted. Security forces flooded the corridors. The team braced for the inevitable clash. The firefight was fierce and unrelenting. Ellie took cover behind a console, firing precisely, every shot a declaration of defiance. The team moved with coordination born from shared struggle, protecting the decryptor and each other. Amidst the chaos, Ellie found herself face to face with an unexpected adversary. A former ally turned traitor, a man who had once stood beside her in the coalition but had betrayed them for promises of power. "You shouldn't have come back," he sneered. "This is bigger than you." Ellie's gaze was steely. "Justice is bigger than power," she said. "And it always wins." The confrontation was brief but brutal. Ellie's team managed to subdue the traitor, securing him for interrogation. But time was running out. "We need to move," Marcus urged. Ellie nodded, her fingers flying over the decryptor's interface. The files began downloading, the final pieces of a puzzle that would shatter the Shadow Network's illusion of invincibility. Outside, Elon's team faced their own challenges. Counterattacks surged in waves, desperate attempts by the Shadow Network to reclaim control. But the Coalition's technology and preparation were unmatched. Holding steady, Elon reported. "Data stream is clean. We're ready to broadcast." Back inside the facility, Ellie's heart pounded as the download completed. She pulled the drive free and gave the signal for extraction. The team raced back through the corridors, evading capture and fighting off pursuers. The rooftop extraction point was their last hope. As they burst into the night air, helicopters whirred above. The extraction team descended just in time. Ellie and her team climbed aboard, adrenaline flooding every nerve. Once airborne, the weight of the mission settled in. They had the evidence. They had the truth. "Now," Ellie said, voice steady but charged with emotion, "we let the world see." The Coalition's broadcast was unprecedented. They released the data live, unfiltered, undeniable proof of the Shadow Network's crimes, corruption, and manipulation. The reaction was instantaneous. Governments were forced to act, arrests followed, and public outcry surged. But Ellie knew this was only the beginning. The fight for truth and justice was eternal. She looked around at her team, battered but unbroken. "We stood in the darkest hour," she said softly. "And we found the light." The chapter closed with Ellie reflecting on the journey, the sacrifices, the battles, and the hope that had fueled them all. "The shadows may return," she thought, "but so will we. Stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever comes next." The dust had settled. After weeks of relentless battle, the world was waking up to a new reality. The Shadow Network's reign of deception was shattered, their crimes exposed for all to see. Governments scrambled to hold accountable those who had orchestrated years of manipulation and fear. News outlets broadcast the Coalition's revelations non-stop, turning Ellie Donovan and her team into symbols of resistance and hope. But Ellie knew better than anyone, the end of one battle was just the beginning of another. In the quiet sanctuary of the Coalition's headquarters, Ellie sat across from Elon Musk. The hum of computers and low murmur of the team working around them filled the room, but in that moment, silence hung heavy between them. "We did it," Elon said softly. "Against all odds." Ellie smiled faintly. "Yes. But at what cost?" She looked around, the faces of those who had stood beside her through every crisis, every narrow escape. They were tired, bruised, but unbroken. "We've changed the world," Elon added. "But the question is, can we keep it changed?" Ellie's thoughts drifted to the lessons learned. Trust had been the hardest battle. Betrayals had cut deep, and the shadows had been relentless. Yet it was unity and unwavering belief in their mission that had carried them through. "It's not just about technology or evidence," she said. "It's about people, their courage, their voices." Juno entered the room, holding a file with urgency. "Ellie, you need to see this." The room fell silent as Ellie took the file, her eyes scanning the documents. Her breath caught. This changes everything." The file revealed a hidden layer of the Shadow Network, one even darker, more insidious. A secret faction operating beyond the eyes of governments and media, with ties to influential figures in unexpected places. This faction had been pulling strings from the shadows, even behind the operations Ellie's coalition had exposed. They were never just a network, Juno explained. They were the root system, corrupting, manipulating, controlling. Elon leaned forward, brows furrowed. "So, the fight isn't over?" Ellie's gaze hardened. "No. This is just the beginning of a new war, one fought not just in courts or on servers, but in the very heart of society. The revelation shook the coalition but also steeled their resolve. "We have to be smarter," Ellie declared. "We have to be relentless." She stood, the fire in her eyes renewed. "We've proven that even the darkest shadows can be exposed. Now, we have to shine a light on the deeper rot, no matter the cost." Outside, the world was beginning to heal, but Ellie knew vigilance was paramount. The fragile peace was a fragile victory, and complacency could undo everything. Her phone buzzed with messages from supporters worldwide, people inspired by their courage, ready to join the fight for truth and justice. Ellie smiled, the weight of leadership balanced by the hope in those messages. "We are not alone," she said softly. "We never were." That night, Ellie reflected on her journey, from the uncertain beginnings, through heartbreak and betrayal, to triumph and revelation. The road had been long, and the cost high. But every step had taught her the power of resilience, the necessity of courage, and the unbreakable strength of unity. In a final message broadcast to the world, Ellie spoke directly, her voice steady and impassioned. "This is a call to every person who believes in justice and truth. The shadows will always seek to hide their deeds. But together, we can shine a light so bright that no darkness can survive. Our journey is far from over, but together, we will rise. We will stand. And we will never stop fighting for a better tomorrow." As the broadcast ended, Ellie stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars, a reminder that even in darkness, light endures. Then, her phone vibrated again. A new message, anonymous, yet chilling. "You think you've won? The real game has only just begun." Ellie's heart raced, but she smiled. "Bring it on." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?